In this video, I will briefly provide a high-end demo of Document Logistics' enterprise information management software, which enables you to store any type of electronic file and automate business processes. I'll briefly cover what features and functionality Exterant currently has and provide an overview on some of the different modules or tools that we offer in our product suite. I'm going to log in to our software. It is browser-based and it works with any internet browser, so Edge, Chrome, Internet Explorer, Firefox. Each user is assigned a unique username and password. Our optional multi-factor authentication can either be turned on or off for an additional layer of security, and this feature comes standard with our software. So I'm going to enter in my username and password. I've turned on the multi-factor authentication by accessing it in our administrative program. So I'll click Login. It's going to send an email associated to the account of the user with a PIN or a token, if you will. So here's my PIN. I can log in. So the first screen that a user will see when they log in is the dashboard. This is a configurable dashboard that can be set up either by user and or like department. So for example, I'm highlighting the accounts payable department. It will have all the accounts payable inboxes or queues. If I click onto the HR department, a different set of inboxes or queues or commonly saved searches might show up here. Again, this is extremely configurable. And I'll come in and show a little bit more on this here later in the demo. But I'm going to click on my Explore tab. I can single click to keep it open on this tab, or I can click this arrow to open it in a new tab. So in its most simplistic sense, think of our software as a digital filing cabinet. In my demo system, I've chosen to name the following drawers here on the left-hand side, just in our demo. Again, this is configurable and you can have as many drawers as you want. So if you think about a physical filing cabinet, you have your cabinet drawers on the left-hand side here, and then within those drawers you'll have a folder. So these are all my folders within my HR drawer, and then within those folders you'll have your documents. So just as you would write, for example, on an employee's folder, you might put their employee name, maybe their employee number, a department, a date of birth, and perhaps a status in Sharpie on their regular folder within a filing cabinet. The same type of information can be put into the software. Again, if I open the folder and access the documents, information can be tagged associated to the documents as well. And we refer to these as indexes. It's commonly known as like metadata. So over here on the right, these are called document indexes. We can have required fields that are mandatory every time a new document is put into the system, and optional fields as well. So perhaps maybe status or next approver doesn't apply to these documents here in human resources, but they might apply to some other documents. So for the document indexes, we have a description, a status, a next approver, and what we refer to as a sub-document type. And again, these are best practices, just something we've put in our demo system, not necessarily that might apply to each business here. So we've put different types of documents like a resume, a PTO request, a performance review, and notice that they're in a drop down where I can just click one of them. And we do this as a best practice to standardize the way information is put into the system, versus if someone were to type something out, for example, like PTO request, someone might type out paid time off request, or someone alternatively could abbreviate it like it is here, PTO request. So this standardizes the way everyone selects each type of document. So in the same way we have indexes on the document level, if we go back to the folder level, we can associate indexes on each folder, mandatory or required if you will, every time a new folder is created, and optional fields as well. And again, this is all configurable. So traditionally, indexes are used to associate key information to help search and retrieve a folder or a document at a later time. And this still holds true. However, we can then use these indexes, a business automation process. So if I go to my accounts payable drawer, open up a folder, select an invoice, instead of just saying this is a purchase invoice, maybe the invoice number, we can tie a status to the document itself. So perhaps this one is paid. Maybe we can put awaiting approval. So indexes are something that can be configured depending on the business, and that kind of sets the foundation for the demo. So from here, I'm going to transition to the scanning portion of the demo. I'm going to open up my scan portal. I can choose my resolution, my paper size, if I want color or black and white. I have a scanner that uses a Twain driver, so any Twain driver can scan directly into our software. I can hit the scan button. I've scanned 3 pages here, and I can simply right click and hit split. If I want to do bulk scanning, or if I've made a mistake, I can merge with previous. If I click on them, there's going to be a preview over here on the right hand side. So this is a invoice sample from UST. This is an invoice for ADCO, so I can split it and save multiple documents into the system at one time. And this is an invoice from Camera Run. So I have 3 different documents here. So I can click Save All to save all 3 of them and index them into the software. Or if I click one, I can save them individually. So I'll save them all at one time. I have 3 different documents over here. I can simply click on the preview of the document. It'll bring up a preview over here. If you have multiple vendors, we can filter by supplier or vendor name. It'll bring up that folder, and then we can index manually. Again, this is the manual way of doing this. There's another automated way of doing so. However, I'm showing you the scanning program that Xterran purchased. So when I'm done, I can move on to my next document. Another way of scanning in is, let's refresh my view. I'm just showing it as like a tree view, so then I can go to ADCO, and this is just another way to manually index. I'm getting the invoice number off the top here. Again, this is my only required field, so then I can go on to the next one. Camera 1. When I'm done with all the required fields, I can hit finish, and it will take those pages directly into those folders within the accounts payable drawer, and those are a list of the different documents that I scanned in. I'll transition into searching within the program, and I'll keep it pretty brief because it's fairly straightforward. So I can search across all the drawers with common fields, or I can select a specific drawer depending on who I am. And again, I'm logged in as an administrator, so I have access to everything, but from a permissions perspective, users can have permissions to only see within their specific function. So if I'm in accounts payable, I might only see the accounts payable drawer. If I'm in HR, I can only see HR, etc. So I'll select accounts payable, and then I can search on one of my suppliers that I uploaded an invoice for. We have a couple different ways of searching, so we can do an equal search where we have to spell the name out perfectly, or a contain search where it might be a hard supplier name, different kind of criteria here. So I'll just hit run search, and so I'm telling the systems to show me all of my suppliers folders that contain camera 1. And as you can see, this is the invoice that we just scanned here a couple minutes ago. If I don't like my query results, I can go back and change them. Or I can say %prompt, and it'll prompt me to put in a supplier. And then I can save that search. And then talked about the dashboard before, we can save that search so that when other users in the department, or just the user that's logged in currently, don't want to put in that criteria every time, they can simply click this save search button, and it has that prompt so they can type it up and find it quicker. So the other option is searching by documents. And so again, these indexes that we used really help us find these documents a lot quicker. So I can say show me all of my purchase invoices from the supplier camera 1. Or I can say show me all my purchase invoices from Burnt Tree with a status of awaiting approval. So if someone has a question on an invoice that it's paid or not, this is an easy way to find those documents, reference the invoice numbers, and say, hey, these are the only outstanding invoices, for example. Additionally, we have a full text search component which Xterran has purchased that reads and extracts all of the typed text that's legible so that it can be searched upon by keyword. So if I go to my full text search, I can say show me all the documents that have the word, for example, school in it. And in this drawer there happen to be 3 documents that came up. I can open it. And it shows me I searched for the word school. There's 5 hits. Over here on the left hand side, it's going to tell me how many hits per page. So on page 2 there's 1 hit for school. And it highlights it for me. Or I can just click on these arrows to say give me the next page. Page 29 is the next one. So on and so forth. And then I can do a new search within the document if I wanted to as well. There's a couple more searching criteria that we can do. They're fuzzy searches, wildcard searches, and this is something that is within the software, and I'll provide documentation on as well. So from a features perspective, there's a couple different features that we have that come standard with an enterprise license, and I've highlighted the ones that Xterran has purchased. So you have desktop scanning, which I showed you, that's the manual indexing. Full text search is the one I just showed as well. There's a couple other features, check-in and check-out, auditing, and versioning. So I'll show those right now as well. So auditing is our audit trail that tracks a history of every action within a document. So I can click on a document here, click on my audit trail, and it'll show me the username, so system administrator, from the IP address, the date and time, and then what action they did for each record. So that's auditing. Check-in, check-out is for changing the versioning or tracking the history of a version of each record. So from a contract perspective. If I open up an application document like a Word document, Excel, PowerPoint, so on and so forth, we have a version tab. So in our software you can double click and it's going to open up that document from our web product and check it out. So it's going to ask me if I want to save it. Most of the time each user can click yes to remember their choice so they don't have this pop-up, but it's up to them on how they want to do that. So I'll click yes. I can open it. And then I can make updates. Click save. Click close. It automatically checked out the document as soon as I opened it, and now I can check in. Optionally, you have the option to click undo if it was a mistake. It's going to ask me if I want to delete my local copy, so again that's up to the end user, and we can always remember the choice. So I'll click yes. And then it's going to give me a couple options here. So right now it's on version 1. If I said yes to a major version, it would update it to version 2. If I said yes to a minor version, it would update it to version 1.1. I can keep it the same as well, or I can click cancel. So I'll make it a minor version, and it updates it to version 1.1. Some common questions that we come across are when a document is checked out, that document cannot be updated or edited by anyone else. It's a read-only version, and then the software will tell you who has checked that document out, so you can bug them if it's been too long to say, hey, you need to check it back in. You see here the original version was kept in the software. That's a configurable option. You can delete it if you want and just keep the latest version, or keep them both like you've seen here. So then I'm going to go into the image viewer, is what we call it whenever you open a file. And so if I single click, it'll give me all the pages on the left hand side. Again, these are some of the annotation tools, which I'll dive into a little bit later, that are a feature that is standard with our software, but again, Xteron's Broken Arrow division elected not to purchase them at this time. So we have a couple different options. So we can export the document. You can do a range of pages, a selection, and then convert it to a TIFF, PDF, JPEG, PNG on the fly. We can burn annotations again if you elect to use annotations such as like a redaction or a sticky note, or create it as a zip file, or do a password as well. You can email directly from the software and email it as a attachment file, like a PDF or a TIFF. JPEG, so on and so forth, or a web reference, which is a link to a document. So if one user that has access to the software is emailing it a document or a set of documents to another user, they can use it as a web reference, which would require the recipient to click on that web link and use their credentials, A, as a additional layer of security, and then B, to ensure they have permissions to see that document as well, or you can just send like a standard attachment. This can be sent to users within the system, and then if you wanted to send it to a customer that doesn't have access, for example, you could just use it as an attachment as a file. Documents can be printed. We can generate a link. Documents can be downloaded locally. And pages can be reordered or appended, and this is a standard feature that comes with our software. At this point, I'm going to cover some of the other business process automation tools that Document Logistics offers, which Xteron currently has not purchased. And so I'll start with some of the more common ones, which are annotations. I'll open up an invoice here. again, if I single click, on the right hand side there's a couple different tools so I can highlight specific information. I can change the color of the annotation and select who has access to see the highlight, for example, and what permissions they have as well. Sticky notes can also be created. And again, permissions can be set to who has access to view, edit, or modify or delete the text by adding users or groups. For sensitive information, redactions can be applied, and permissions can be set to see who has access behind the redaction. Pre-configured text stamps can be set. Image stamps can be uploaded as well. So if there's like a physical rubber stamp, this can be made digitally. This was a stamp that a university put on each paper record, so we created this in Paint so that they could do this digitally. And then, by selecting our text feature, they could type text as to the account, the class, who entered it, the date, so on and so forth. And then lastly, digital signatures can be applied with permission so that one person doesn't have access to another person's digital signature as well. So the next item on the list is document encryption, and this is a tool that's set in the background. There are 6 different types of encryption, including a custom algorithm encryption, but document encryption can be turned on to encrypt all the documents on the back end of the software. The ability to screen scrape from one application to another can be configured as well. I showed you advanced annotations, which are image stamps, text stamps, redactions, so on and so forth. Enhanced admin is another feature to help administrators set individual groups, for example, or drawers within Active Directory. We have integration with Microsoft Office products such as Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook to save directly from Word into Document Manager. From here, I'm going to show you our batch scanning module that helps automate the processing of document scanning. It uses an OCR tool, but can also use barcodes, zonal OCR, and process batches. I'll open up my batch capture desktop icon here. And this is an additional module that needs to be purchased. So I'm going to enter in my username and password. Batch capture works on a profile or a set of profiles that are pre-configured, telling the software what to do. So for example, in this first profile, AP invoice OCR, it's simply going to read all the text so that I can help index the document without any hand keying. Versus this AP invoice is barcoded, looks at a barcode to look up the vendor and supplier, and then autofill based on all the information already uploaded into my ERP system. Versus this profile uses zonal OCR to look at specific information in key spots that is consistent, or it's like a fixed form, if you will. So I'll show you the first one, which is the AP invoice OCR. I'm going to simulate what it's like to scan, as I don't have these documents on my scanner and paper form. And I'll choose a couple different invoices here. There's red on the background of these documents indicating different documents. I'm going to click Process. An optional description field is going to come up. So depending on your scanning process, if you have one person centrally scanning, we can then send it out to different people to index. So I can say Dan's batch to index with today's date, for example, or we can just auto send it without a batch description. It's completely configurable. So it's going to send it to the software. And again, this is where my dashboard comes into play and my alerter, which is a pop-up feature that indicates something new has been added to an inbox. So for example, I have an alerter every time a new document is ready to save or index. Pop up a little alert here, and I can just hit this little link and it'll take me right to it. So here we go. Dan's batch to index is ready to index. And again, this profile was based so that it can read and extract the typed text, so that I can just click on it instead of manually type it. Alright, there are 3 pages on the left-hand side with one document. This profile automatically knows the document type is a purchase invoice, saving that step for somebody to manually select. I can click the supplier field and highlight the supplier. And because it OCR'd it, I don't have to type it. I can then go to my invoice number, scroll in a little bit, hold down my shift key, and again, don't have to type. So then I can go down to my value, hit my shift key, perhaps go back up to my invoice date, and then I can go to my PO number. And once I'm done indexing the fields, I can click on the bottom, next page. And since this is not ADCO services, this is camera 1, I can click split document to now save these documents in their respective folders. So now the index information has changed. It's still a purchase invoice. My supplier is camera 1 Ltd. My invoice number is there. My invoice value is here. Here's my invoice date. Since I don't have a PO number, I'll go on to the next one. This is UST, so I'll click my split button again. Click on my supplier. I pretend my invoice number is my reference number. Here's my invoice value, invoice date, and we're good to go. So now I can click save. It's going to save all 3 of these documents in their respective folders. So again, this profile was just to set up so that it helps reduce the manual keying of documents. So then I can go to my profile to show you the next one, and I'll show you our zonal OCR. Again, this is just for fixed forms. So I'll click scan. I'll process. It's going to send it, and it's going to, depending on the profile, ask it to zonal OCR, whatever the index are according to that profile. If I open up my dashboard, I've got my alerter. I'll open up my batch. In this profile, I've told it, because I know the invoice is always going to be in this location, automatically extract that number. Because the supplier is always going to be in this location, automatically extract that text. I don't know where the invoice value is always going to be. Let's say there's 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe 2 pages worth of line items, so I didn't tell it to extract the value. But I knew the date was always going to be in this area too. So then it extracted 2 separate documents because the value of the invoice number changed. I can click Save, and we'll save them into their folders. The last one I want to show you is a lookup with a barcode. So from an HR perspective, if we put barcodes on all of our different types of documents, you're going to see a couple different colors over there on the left. The green documents signify a document with a barcode on it, which is a new type of document. And so here's page 1, this is going to be page 2, this will be page 3. This document has a new barcode, so that signifies page 1 of a new document. This page has a new barcode, so that's going to signify page 1 of a new document, and then there's 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this is a new document with 2 pages, so I have 5 total documents here. I'll hit process. It'll send the documents to our software to be indexed according to the profile. So I can use my dashboard. Open up my batch. It'll have all my documents pre-parsed into different records because of the barcodes and by their document types. But as you can notice, it doesn't know surname, last name, first name, employee number. So we have name right here. So this is an automated way of doing this. However, I'm showing this manually because if I type in the last name Ford, this would be considered an exception. There's 4 Fords in my database that I'm looking up to. Carol Ford, Henry Ford, Dylan Ford Weiss, and Debbie Waterford. We're going to look for Carol Ford, so I can select her. It's going to autofill all the information based on the lookup, and then I can just save it directly into the employees folder. So a couple different options when it comes to the batch capture program to help automate and streamline that process. Really quickly, I'll touch base on our next tool, which is our automated workflow module. So we have a program that is a drag and drop program to help route documents for approval. So you can literally take a stage, drag it onto the screen, and then link them by connecting steps. Within these actions, we can apply images, notes, so on and so forth. So whatever the process is, we can have these conditions to add users for approval, for example. So this is an invoice approval, where we can say anytime there's a new invoice, automatically update its index and allocate to an approver to say it's awaiting its first level of approval. And then that person can either reject it, they can send it to a second level approval if it's an amount over their approval budget, or they can pay it, and then that second level approver can approve it and then get it paid as well. So it's an easy to use drag and drop system that anyone can learn. There's also an error or warning message, so if there's a couple different steps that don't sync perfectly, it will alert you before you draw out the whole workflow and then have to dig and find a needle in a haystack. I can click save and email it for someone to review, or if I publish it, it'll publish it directly to the end users, which I'll show you here. So there's a university that has 8 different locations over here on the left hand side, and each one has their own manager for their own location. There's a couple different colors here. So end users can configure each inbox or queue, if they have permissions to a different color based on whatever is visually alerting to them. So I'm going to click on the Austin's inbox. I can click on the workflow button. The next step in this workflow is to review the invoice. So it's going to open it up in another tab. I can click on my workflow button and either approve or reject the invoice. So let's click reject. So the next step, it's automatically going to ask me for an invoice rejection. It's going to update my invoice status accordingly. So then I can pretend that I'm, getting it fixed. I can come back and approve it. And I can verify that I am the invoice approver, for example. It'll automatically update the invoice status. So a simplistic kind of end user perspective. The invoice or workflow approval process can be as complex as you want it to be, so we can route it based on the invoice value to a specific person, for example, or just do a simple approve and reject. So next I'm going to transition to our retention product. Document retention can be configured as simple as something like purge all finance documents after 7 years, or send me an email to approve for all of the documents that are going to be purged before they are purged automatically. So in this area is where we would configure the retention policies based on your company's retention schedule. If you have any questions on this, or if you'd like to see another demo and ask specific questions, I'd be happy to do so. Just please let me know. I will follow up with a additional information in an email.